Hello and welcome to Pale Blue Pod, the astronomy podcast for people who are overwhelmed by the universe but still want to be its friend. I'm your host. I'm Dr. Moiya McTier, an astrophysicist, a folklorist, and a good friend to the universe. I am recording this episode from my office at Pale Blue Podiversity, but I have a guest calling in from Mexico City. Very exciting. Today I'm joined by Keenan Steiner, a stand-up comedian, and he should be calling in any moment. Hello, Keenan. Welcome to the show.
Oh my God. Hello. How's it going, Moiya? How are you?
I'm all right. How are you down there? Is it warm? Is it warm and nice in Mexico City?
Yep. It's always pretty much nice. I always tell people, they're like, how's the weather in Mexico City? First of all, they think I'm at the beach all the time. And I'm like, no, this is like a mountain area, this particular part of Mexico. I'm not at the beach. I am high up elevation. So the elevation is really high in Mexico City, over 6,000 feet. Getting close to space. We're getting closer to space than you are in New York.
Certainly. You're closer to space. You're above more of the atmosphere. So when you see the stars, they twinkle a little bit less for you.
Oh, I did not know that. I have to look up.
Mm-hmm. You do. Maybe after this podcast, you'll be inspired.
Well, one problem is Mexico City is such a polluted city. It's not known for its stars, but you can, as soon as you get out of Mexico City into the rest of Mexico, yo boy, it is magical.
Mm-hmm. Have you gone out? Like, what's been your experience out there seeing the dark skies?
I always just feel peaceful when I see. I've spent a lot of time in a place called Puerto Vallarta, which is a beach city on the Pacific side. You know, you're on the beach and you can look up, and I just think every time, if you, especially being like kind of a city person, when you get out of the city and you see stars, you're like, wow, I feel so at peace. Just, this is what it should be.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to dig into that a little deeper. What do you mean should be? Like back to some sort of natural primal state?
I think that's part of it. It's obviously, it seems extremely unnatural to be living in a city and like not see the stars above you for some reason all the time. Mm-hmm. And I also I think I grew up going to summer camp. And so you're like surrounded by nature and, you know, with the stars above you. And it just gives you this sense of peace. I don't know what it is other than like, you can hear the crickets, you can hear the things around you, and then you're looking up. It's just the richness of it. I always feel good. The more density of stars I feel, that's the science experiment. Like, that's the proportion. Higher density of stars, higher density of mental health.
We have our first equation of the day.
I'm trying. My non-math self is going to try.
Yeah. No, I like that. It makes sense to me because the more stars you see, especially coming from light polluted cities, you know you're in a cleaner environment.
Maybe your body knows that instinctively.
I'm curious, when you think about the rest of the universe, so not necessarily the stars that you can see in the sky, but all of the galaxies and all of the dark matter and dark energy and stuff. When you think of that, do you still feel peaceful?
Wow. To some degree, yes, because you're thinking of whatever is a black hole, whatever is a galaxy out there, and this is all this matter that's simply existing without disruption and agitation. Ooh. It is something that is like, I mean, and I could be completely wrong because maybe there's a ton of disruption constantly. And obviously things are blowing up constantly and just dying like thousands of years ago. And then we're looking at them.
Yeah.
But I think there's something about other galaxies or a black hole or something that it's like nobody is there controlling. So it's like we as humans are trying to control our environments constantly, especially me as someone with obsessive compulsive disorder. I just am always trying to control in order to feel like I am going to be able to be okay, like in whatever task I'm doing. And I just feel like there's something about space, like you said, where there's something about other galaxies where what can be controlled? I mean, nothing. You're stuck in the unknowing of there's nothing I could really do about this but watch or feel it or be in it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Yeah, that relinquishing of control can be very freeing.
Very freeing. What can I do about it? I can only be myself. I can only be me. I have no control over this. So it limits your options. It's like, I can't change this problem. I better accept it, which is so good for an OCD person. I'm bringing in random mental health into your podcast.
Please.
which I have a podcast about mental health. Boy, really just plug it in, literally, Keenan. But like I feel at best when I kind of I can't do anything about my environment in a sense.
I understand that. I understand the value of letting other people make decisions and like other things rule stuff. But to your point about it being interrupted and all of these explosions and stuff happening, space is very dynamic. It's changing, it's moving all the time, but on scales that are hard to see on, like the 10-year, 100-year lifespans that we have. So another source of comfort for me with space and in terms of this control conversation is, yes, we don't have control over it, so let's let it go. But also the universe teaches us that things are moving behind the scenes even when we don't necessarily see that progress. So I choose to believe that, when I'm faced with an obstacle, things are happening behind the scenes to try and push me to the next phase in the cycle.
I do like that.
I want to know if you have a favorite unit of measurement.
Oh my God. My answer is so filthy and dirty that I cannot even tell you. Can I tell you?
No, you have to tell me now.
Because I started writing a joke yesterday about this. My answer is my dick, Moiya. And okay, people say that the space between your thumb and your index finger is exactly the size of your penis. And the space between my thumb and index finger is 6 inches. Not that I'm revealing anything on this podcast that I don't want to reveal or do.
Of course.
If you want to know more, go to my OnlyFans. I'm just kidding. I don't have one. But I probably should to actually make money. And
after this, yeah.
After this, yeah. And so sometimes I just use, when I need to like measure a desk or like how much space do I have to put this desk in, I use this as every 6 inches.
All right. So you're like, well, that desk is, what, like 10 Keenan dicks across?
You got it. Got it.
It's a lot more fun instead of like half Subway sandwiches. And there's precedent set for this because in horses, they measure horses in hands.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're like, that horse is 10 hands tall.
That's fantastic.
What a lovely unit.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. My favorite. Yeah, no, I measure everything in dicks. And then, of course, if it's something more physics related, I measure it in balls because it's 3-dimensional. Okay.
Oh, good.
I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to handle I wouldn't know how to exactly to do that. But
we can estimate a volume.
Estimate a volume. But I'm like really nerdy in some way, and I want to answer your question. And so I want to give you a backup measurement. And I want to say I love a teaspoon because it's just so little. And it's just... Why is it called a teaspoon? And then why is the other one a tablespoon? Can't it just be like 3 teaspoons? Why is it so complicated?
Right. Great question.
Yeah.
The way you said teaspoon was very cute.
Oh, thank you.
It's a cute unit of measurement.
Or maybe I also like a pinch. No one talks about that being a measurement. A pinch of salt. We don't know what it is. It's very indeterminate. No. It's very dependent on what you want, what you think it should be. And so it's a subjective measurement. And what's better than like a little spice, like a little bit of like, my pinch is different than your pinch.
Yeah, we need that variety in our lives. Okay, thank you for your thoughts on measurement. I want to pivot to zodiac signs. Do you feel like your sun sign fits who you are as a person?
Too much, yeah.
What does that mean? What's your sign?
I'm just such a Pisces. I'm such a Pisces. First of all, growing up, you read what it means to be a Pisces. And I think you read adventurous, you read can blend in any environment, you read creative, you read a dreamer. And I think there's no doubt that both reading that influences who you are. And then also, I've always been good at like fitting into different environments and being friends with different people. I mean, literally, I live in Mexico and I do stand-up comedy in Spanish. And I'm vibing with, people who are of completely different culture than me all the time. And I love travel. And I've always loved travel within this earth, within the pale blue. And I've traveled a lot in my life. And and I've even back in my 20s was backpacking a lot. That just requires an incredible amount of chameleonality. I made up that word.
It works.
Thank you. This is kind of a thought that I've been having. It's like Pisces, we're so emotional. We feel a lot. We're not only big feelers, we know what's going on before y'all know what's going on. Like, we have this intuition about us where it's like, I could tell you what you like and like we're like little witches.
Okay.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, very intuitive.
We're intuitive. Like, everything, my decision, we're just gut based. People will sometimes in my life be like, how did you know that? I'm like, it's obvious that, you know, you love anime, or we know this. This is not like, you didn't have to say anything, you know, or whatever it is. So I think we're like that. And I'm a rising Leo, which also makes sense. So
okay.
I knew this question was coming. I've listened to this pod before, and I feel like I can answer this question, and then you're going to get into space. So I'm like, how much of the episode can I take up talking about Pisces? Okay, I'm kind of kidding. I'm kidding, because I cannot wait to get into space with you. I'm just excited. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to know anything, and it's going to be great.
It's going to be great. And if at any point you have questions, please ask them, because I want it to be clear. But I have one final question for you, because you mentioned travel. You mentioned wanting to go into space with me. So let's imagine that we are traveling into space, and you are in charge of the playlist when we launch our rocket. So what song are you going to play during blastoff?
Unfortunately, the first song that came to mind was Rocket Man by Elton John, which I cannot give you because someone has given you before, and I just cannot be that generic. I'm not the best at thinking of songs, but I'm going to work with you. Okay. I'm going to give you guys, the listeners, my process of how I'm thinking about this. Maybe it's like, don't stop believing.
Yeah. Good hopeful vibes.
Yeah, maybe Journey, Don't Stop Believing.
That wasn't much of a process at all, actually. You arrived pretty quickly at that destination.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the brain works. What can I tell you?
Sometimes. Don't stop believing in the brain, and it will work.
100%. Well, there's people in the background working for us. And
yes.
So, that's what pronoia is.
So if you've learned nothing else from this episode, at least you can take away pronoia. But there are some other things that I would want people to take away from this episode. So today we're talking about Mesoamerican astronomy. Mesoamerica, for those of you who don't remember your middle school history classes, is this historical region. So it's not a location that we would designate today, but it's from 4,000 years ago to like 1,500 is when the Mesoamerican empires, there were many of them, existed. Some of the ones that you may have heard of are the Olmec, the Toltec, and of course the Maya and the Aztec and the Incans. Mayan and Aztec astronomy was really advanced. We can see that in their architecture. We can see that in their mythology and some documents that were left behind. And so I want to talk in this episode about their astronomical beliefs and some of the research that they did there back then, and also a little bit of the status of astronomy in that region today.
Yes, please.
Is there anything you are especially interested in hearing about or talking about? Yeah,
I don't know if this touched you at all, but in your research, I've read a little bit about the Aztec Empire. And so, because I'm so Mexico City focused, this place is steeped in Aztec history. Aztec is a broad term for a few different groups of people at the time, but the language that was spoke, Nahuatl, is still the name of a lot of places throughout Mexico City. Mexico City was conquered by the Spanish, but the culture remained. So I guess I know a little bit less about the Mayan. And the other thing that strikes me is because I went to the Anthropology Museum here, and you see some of the old sculpture, the old Aztec sculpture, and they have this like circular calendar.
We're going to get into the calendar because that's a huge part of how they represented their astronomical knowledge. Oh, very cool. And then obviously they sacrificed people to please the gods. And when I say they, I mean, I'll try, even though I'm not a Mexican, I'm just someone who likes Mexico and has lived here for many years and is very interested. Obviously, it's a complex history, but sometimes people think they sacrificed their own people. But I think some of the time, from what I understand, is like sacrifice also meant like, we're going to conquer these enemies and sacrifice their children. It wasn't the Aztec or the Nahua, as I usually call them, or the Mexica, as some people call them, they spread their empire in a pretty forceful way And that had interesting consequences for their folklore and mythology and how that spread, and how it was like justified by their folklore and mythology. But as they were spreading, conquering other people around them, they would force them into submission in part through these ritual sacrifices.
Which is so ironic to me because I think in history, when you think about past civilizations, you think, wow, they would sacrifice their lives to please the gods. No. What they did was they would find other peoples who they wanted to conquer and take them and kill them. I mean,
Yes.
it's like, is it sacrifice when when you don't know the person? It sounds a little bit more like murder.
I mean, language evolves, right? These two could have been synonyms in the past.
Exactly. I'm going to sacrifice this person I don't care about and have never met before. Oh, it means so deep. It's sacrifice because obviously the word sacrifice has this term of like some kind of giving up something of your own. So,
yeah. But Keenan,
anyway.
show me the line in the dictionary where it says that it has to be your own life, right? Like at that point, I can see their line of reasoning where after they've conquered people, those people belong to them. They are sacrificing their own things at that point.
Boy, you're such a colonist, and your colonial mindset needs to be deconstructed, and me as a white man needs to do it.
You're right. I approve of what they did. Yep. So I do want to talk about some of the differences between the Mayan and Nahua empires and how those differences in culture are related to their astronomy. But they all were in basically the same region. So the Maya empire started, like their culture started around 2000 BCE. We're going back over 4,000 years. But they started building cities around 200 CE, so 200 in the Common Era. And before that, they were, nomads, they were hunter-gathering, they were kind of living on the outskirts of the Olmec Empire before they kind of rose to their dominance. And they spread geographically from the Yucatan Peninsula, which is where the asteroid that killed most of the dinosaurs landed.
Oh my God,
Did you know
that's
that?
right.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had vague, because I think you can visit the crater or something. I could be, okay.
Yeah, the Chicxulub crater is down in the Yucatan Peninsula.
Wow.
And so it started there and then kind of spread down into Belize and Guatemala. And then the Nahua, or the Aztec Empire, came around much later. So if the Mayans started in 2000 BCE, the Nahua didn't start until around 1300 AD. They're really new, and they only lasted a couple hundred years until the Spanish invaded in the 1500s. But they spread far, and part of the reason they were able to be so successful was their kind of forceful strategy of going out, kind of like the Romans, going out to neighboring areas and adopting their beliefs, but only so that they could enforce their existing doctrine. It's a lot easier to force people to believe your religion if you incorporate small bits of their existing religion first.
It's so interesting. Makes me think of two things. One is that people think of the Aztecs as people, but they're more of a conglomerate of a group that we look back and we name in history.
Yes.
Because we're talking basically about the Mexica, who that is Moctezuma, who is the last emperor of the Mexicas and is associated with who fell to the Spanish in 1521. He wouldn't be surprised if he was into astrology because he was a quirky character.
Yeah, and a lot of their priests and leaders would have been aware of it.
And a lot of them were interesting because I think this is the case with Moctezuma, but it could be the case with at least certainly other Mexica leaders. They were both warriors and priests. They were trained in that. That was seen as a positive thing. The reason I wanted to bring this up more broadly is because it's very interesting that the Aztecs practiced this dominance over the people around them, and ironically eventually got conquered by people the Spanish who practiced this dominance, also putting up a friendly front at first. The Spanish started with trade, and they started with, we want something innocuous, which is, your gold. But the Aztecs, and this I can say for a fact, the Aztecs were sons of bitches. It's sad that the civilization, it's very sad and very wrong that the Spanish came in, but it's also interesting that the reason the Spanish came in and were able to conquer is because the Aztec Empire, the Mexicas, had made so many enemies with the people around them.
It's so interesting looking into what makes different empires fall and the cracks that have to exist in the foundation before it can. And so people will attribute it to like one thing, the Spanish coming in and invading. And yes, that is the ultimate cause. But there's stuff that happened before then. They spread themselves very thin. They built up a lot of animosity. And when you go in and you force people to believe what you say they have to believe, they're less likely to hold on to it, right? Compare that to the Mayan civilization. So instead of a centralized political system that the Aztec had, the Mayans had this system of many city-states working together. So like Germany or the U.S. with all of our different states ostensibly working as one country. So the Maya had all of these different city-states scattered with their own languages and their own cultures. So it's a lot harder to pinpoint a unified folklore, a unified cosmological belief for the Maya because they were more fractured. And that ultimately led to their downfall. The relationships between the city-states started to crumble around 800, 900, and that was 600 years before the Spanish came in. But there are still 7 million living Mayans. There are still people who identify as being in the Maya Empire, but it's not.
Absolutely. It was interesting that you say that because from what I understand, the Mayans were never defeated by the Spanish. There were skirmishes but it's eventually for the Mayan people in the Yucatan Peninsula, that's why Yucatan has always felt a little bit apart from the rest of Mexico because it's Mayan. Yeah, Yucatan is it's a bit of a different culture. It's Mayan culture and it's a different language than Nahuatl. It's not exactly that the Spanish ever conquered the Mayans. And then when Mexico had to establish a state of Mexico, I think there was probably some conflict there as well because it's kind of no, you're with us. But the Mayans are are we? Again, and this is kind of sketchy history, and obviously the Mayan people are part of Mexico today, but it's an interesting thing where it was it was never formally we submit to anyone. It was more just I think folks assumed because of the territorial integrity that it was within the same territorial area that it's you're coming with us, folks.
Yeah, but the point that they were never conquered is a really good one. And because of that, there's still a lot of surviving text from the Maya about their cosmology. But like I said before, it's fractured. It's not as unified as the Aztec because there were so many different cultures collected under this one umbrella. So the cosmology and the creation myths that we have come from specifically the Quiche people, who were one subgroup of the Maya. And there were others who have some fragments of stories surviving, but we have the Popol Vuh. Popolvuh, this text that was written after the Spanish invasion, specifically by the Quiche people, and it was dictating their oral storytelling traditions, and it tells us all about their cosmology. Would you like to hear about it? What they thought the universe looked like? Yeah. It's more symbolic than geometric. So it's told to us in stories that don't necessarily make it easy to draw a map of their universe, because that's not what they were trying to pay attention to. But in their cosmology, the Earth is at the center of the universe, and it was created by powerful creator deities. Different stories have different gods and different numbers of gods, but the common theme across all of them is that originally Earth didn't have any land. There was the sky and there was the sea and nothing in between. And so gods of the sky and gods of the sea worked together to create the land. In one version that I really love, two gods come together. It's a god of hurricanes and like a god of the deep oceans. And they get together and they just talk and they describe the world, and as they're speaking, their words, the power in them, give rise to the physical manifestation of the earth. That's my favorite story. But they have different stories about, like, the sun and the moon. They have this sun god named Keenan, and every day he walks across the sky. That's how they say that the sun moves from east to west. And then they connect it to their beliefs about death and the afterlife, because every evening, Keenan, when he reaches the western horizon, he turns into a jaguar and he walks through this rift in the path of the Milky Way, this dark void between all of the stars. And they say that that rift is how you get to the afterlife.
So they called it Shibuya, or they called it Yevolva, one or the other. But so explain this to me. So at night, the deity that Keenan passes through the Milky Way at night and finds a jaguar. That's what I heard.
He turns into a jaguar.
Yeah,
and then he walks through the like spot in the sky to reach this other realm, the underworld.
Oh, and then this symbolizes when somebody dies every day or something like that? But this symbolizes...
No, I mean, I guess it is kind of a local symbolism for the sun maybe like dying every day before it's reborn again in the east. But this is how they explained their day-night cycle. And then the afterlife, their underworld, was on the other side of that rift. And then there are a bunch of stories about what happens on the other side. There are these lords who reign over the underworld. There are two hero twins. There are two figures from Mayan folklore who go down into the underworld and they play this game with the lords, and they really protect the living people from a lot of the bad things that the lords of the underworld would want to do to us.
That's interesting because, first of all, they call it the underworld, which you'd think is like a hell, or you'd think is negative. But is their underworld negative?
No, it's very similar to like the realm of Hades in Greek mythology, where all of the good people and all of the bad people go to the same place, but there are like different sections of the underworld.
It did strike me as interesting, the similarities between the mythology that you are describing of Mayan people and Greek mythology.
Yes. I point this out in a lot of talks that I give of comparative mythology and astronomy from around the world. The Norse creation myth also starts with this chaotic void, and then a creator being emerges and makes stuff. And the Aztec story is also very similar. So in the Aztec creation story, it starts with this two-spirited, so like two-gender creator god. There's together they are Ometeotl, but separately it's Ometeotl and Ometeotli. And they...
you know what's interesting is that Greek mythology and Aztec mythology, what you're describing... It does blend. I mean, Greek mythology is very masculine, but at least Hera is there to be like, F you once in a while. And you have powerful women, I think, in stories in Greek mythology that do get their revenge.
Oh, yeah. So many.
And you have what you're talking about, the blend of masculine and feminine coming together in Aztec.
Yeah.
And then, but in the Christian religion, everything comes from men.
Well... Yeah.
Well, no, but like it's all, you know what I mean? Like the it's very patrilineal. It's extremely like God is giving to you. God is supposedly a man. Jesus. I mean, I'm not Christian really, so I can't tell you. But like, it's just so like women are just set out to be inferior from the start.
You can see in like the genders of deities that different cultures hold in high esteem some reflection of gender norms in their societies. Not perfectly matched, right? Because you can see that in Greek mythology, there are roughly equal numbers of gods to goddesses, but women were not roughly equal in Greek society. So it's not a perfect match, but there is something there. You can look at societies that have their sun deity be a man versus a woman. and that might give you some hint at what they think. But yeah, there's very interesting gender stuff tied up in a lot of these myths. So Ometeotl has 4 sons, and they're like the 4 biggest gods in Aztec lore. There's Quetzalcoatl, Huitzilopochtli, Tezcatlipoca, and then Xipe Toltec.
Good for you getting these words out. What is, I'm sorry. This is something you actually study. I'm like, I thought you went into this episode because it's very hard to pronounce those words.
Yeah.
And technically it's, I think, Quetzalcoatl, however you say it in the beginning, it ends in chul, chul. I don't know how to say it, but I know that it ends in chul because it's nahuatl, chul.
Oh, yeah.
So that, but I mean, you did it really well because down here trying to say those words in English as a foreigner, so to say those words in Spanish is really hard. And then I'm like, oh, okay, you've been down this train. This is not your first rodeo. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do always try to put the caveat on things. Like, I know my pronunciation is terrible because I learn about these things from reading. So I know.
It's pretty close.
Appreciate it. So those 4 beings create all of the other hundreds of deity figures that they have in Aztec mythology, and they also create the universe. So they make Earth in the body of an alligator or a crocodile. I can never remember which is.
That's very random that they made Earth the body of the crocodile alligator.
Yeah, I wish I knew. I imagine it comes from older lore, probably something that they adopted. Because I know that I read something from at least some Mayan tribes that have a similar cosmology.
Well, land is green and the crocodile alligator is green, so I don't know.
Yeah. I think especially an amphibious animal that can be on water and land would seem especially majestic to them.
And like a croc sneaks out from the water, kind of like land sneaks out from water. So, okay.
And it's powerful, so it's a figure to look up to.
By the way, I interrupt your stories and just talk when I want. Is that bad?
No.
Okay, great.
No. All right, so there's the body of the crocodile alligator, and then there are 13 levels of heaven above it, and there are like different numbers of levels of a different type of afterlife below. And so there is this stacked cosmology, which is interesting. It's not in shells like the ancient Greeks believed, but it's in this vertical layer. And it's not that you necessarily move through the levels over time, although you can, but you're like assigned to a level based on how you died.
Oh my God. There's a karmic element.
Within all of those levels, they don't even say like where the sun and the moon and the stars are, because that's not what they're paying attention to. But they do have ideas for why those things exist. The moon and the sun, at least, are different deities, different teotls, who are taking turns being the sun and the moon. So there is this really beautiful story, the cycle of the 5 suns, that tells how different gods took turns being the actual sun, not managing it, not maintaining it, but actually physically being the sun, which is interesting.
Interesting. That's wild.
Hey friends, Keenan had to take another call. He put me on hold, but it's okay because apparently he applied to be the next son over Mexico City. So hopefully this means he at least got an interview. Let's all keep our fingers crossed for him. He'll call back when he gets the news. So I figured I'd take this time to share some messages with you, starting with a huge thank you to all of my patrons. I really couldn't make this show without you because I am an independent podcast and no one pays me to do this except for some of you, so thank you. And I want to give a huge shout out and special thank you to my Sun-like stars, Scott Reynolds, Augustin, Tom T, Mark Mahoney, and Nicole Bartlett. You're all golden, and I hope you're all having a great day. If you want to support this indie podcast on Patreon, you can hear your name on the show, make it to my patron star chart, and get research notes for most episodes for $5 a month by joining at patreon.com/palebluepod. Of course, if you can't support financially right now, that's okay. I understand. Things are hard, and you're still space. I love you so much. The best way to help Pale Blue Pod is actually to grow the show's audience. So if you take a link to a specific episode that you enjoy and send it to someone who you think would also enjoy it, that is growing the Pale Blue Pod universe, okay? And I would appreciate any help you could give me in that respect. Next, I want to recommend a podcast for you. It's a new show in the Multitude Network, and it's called This Guy Sucked. This Guy Sucked is a history podcast for haters by haters. You can join historian Dr. Claire Aubin and a new expert every week to pull back the scholarly curtain on some of the world's biggest bummers. No dead person is safe. And the show's guests prove that the best part of understanding the past is criticizing it. They've covered Charlemagne, Carl Schmitt. I just recorded an episode with Dr. Aubin where I talked about Ptolemy, Claudius Ptolemy. Yes, the P can be voiced. But check out This Guy Sucked. New episodes come out every Thursday wherever you get your podcast, and I think you'd enjoy it. That is Keenan's number coming up on my caller ID. So let's get back to this conversation. And so you can see that they were paying attention to things in the night sky and how they moved and when they would appear. And they had very complicated calendar systems to reflect that. The Aztec calendar system was pretty heavily influenced by the Mayan calendar system, so I'm just going to talk about that one here. But they really actually have three or four different calendars that all intersect and operate on these different cycles. So they paid attention to the motion specifically of the sun, moon, and the planets. And they paid a lot of attention to Venus because it's the third brightest object in the sky after the sun and moon. And they associated it with their war god. And so it was like very important to their culture. Like, they really took care in figuring out when the orbits of those bodies would intersect. Apparently, every 8 cycles of the sun, which they thought went around the Earth. So every 8 solar cycles, Venus would make 5 cycles. And so that was, like, that ratio was important to them. Was there any science behind that? Yeah, I mean, the science behind that is very interesting orbital mechanics. They have this resonance in their orbits where it's not interesting physically, but when you like draw out their orbits over time, they make pretty shapes, and that gets incorporated into a lot of spirituality stuff. Oh, wow. But physically, they're just, the right distance from us that it just so happens 5 orbits of one is the same amount of time as 8 orbits of the other. Was that accurate? Yeah. Oh, so okay. That's the other impressive thing. They had no advanced tools. They were doing all of their observations by eye and writing down where the different objects were in the sky and just doing that for thousands of years so that they had really accurate accounts of the orbits of these bodies. Was Venus playing any sort of similar role in Greek mythology that the Mayans, do you know, that the Mayans put a lot of importance on Venus? Did the Greeks or the Romans do anything like that? No, not as much. Okay. Because I was just thinking of the goddess Venus. Right. Yeah, because the Greeks and Romans their astronomy and their beliefs were very influenced by Egypt and Mesopotamia. And so their most important gods, like Jupiter and Zeus, were associated with Jupiter and not Venus. Okay. Yeah. It's so interesting. Just like, and you can see the randomness too. Like, there are a lot of similarities between some cultures, but you can see where it diverges. And that's where I think you do the interesting digging to figure out, like, why did the Mesopotamians assign their important god to Jupiter, but the Mayans assigned it to Venus. Like, it's why? And like, that's something that we don't really know, and that's why you love doing what you're doing in your profession. It's like you get to dig around this stuff and get to use a little bit of creativity too, it sounds like. Yeah. And I find that because really my profession is teaching people things, and this type of negative space where there's a question that science and anthropology like can't really answer, people get excited about those. And so they're good teaching moments. Yeah. Awesome. So the Mayans had a sacred calendar that they used to mark, like religious rituals and events. And that was a 260-day calendar called the Tzolk'in calendar. Tzolk'in? I don't know. Yeah, I'm probably saying it wrong. But it was 13 different weeks or months of 20-day cycles. So 13 groups of 20 is 260 days. I don't know what astronomical body they're following here.
Exactly.
This 280 days doesn't line up with Venus or the moon or the sun. So I don't know exactly how they got there, aside from the fact that 13 and 20 were both really important to them culturally. They counted on like a base 20 system.
Okay.
So I don't think it followed astronomy, but just like their cultural beliefs. And then they had a separate calendar called the Haab, Haab, and that was following the path of the sun.
Maybe what we don't realize is that they were all actually driven by their gods were actually productivity gurus writing books and saying that, like, you know what, if we organized our months in 20-day cycles, we'd all be actually more productive. And I wrote a book called The 260-Day Year, and it's how to accomplish as much as normal people accomplish in a 365-day year, but in only 260 days. And read my book called The 260-Day Year. So I think that's probably what was going on and nobody realizes.
Yeah, that's probably what the ancient Mayan priests were doing.
They all wanted more productivity. Now, it wasn't about getting to the afterlife. It wasn't about sex. It was about productivity.
Yeah. Actually, now that I think about it, I could believe that this 260 days is roughly how long it takes Venus to go from one side of the sun to the other.
Interesting.
Because the Venus cycle is something like 524 days, and 260 is approximately half of that. So let's say that their sacred calendar is based on like the relative positions between Venus and the sun.
You might be onto something. Wow. That's cool that you just figured that out now on this podcast. I'm glad we figured we have a good theory for why it's a 260-day calendar, and the Pale Blue Pod figured it out.
Look, we did. Look, my degree means something. It's real, I promise. But then they also have this extra calendar, which is more straightforward, and it follows the path of the sun. And it's 360 days, so 18 months of 20 days. And then they have 5 extra days at the end, where it's just this special extra month. And they would have special rules for it that would change over time.
We need that. Well,
Yes.
we basically have that with that little interregnum period between Christmas and New Year's where nothing happens and nobody knows what to do and everybody goes into deep, long depression.
No, I've long said that we need an established intercalary period where the rules are different. Like we need a time where it's not the purge, but things need to be relaxed for like 5 days a year.
5 days a year where it's like you really can go nuts and let loose and like... You know, we should celebrate it by drinking whatever they drank, the Mayans drank.
Yes. Look, the Romans, when they had their intercalary period, this might just be an anecdote, but the enslaved people were free during the intercalary period.
That is amazing. When you say intercalary, do you mean you're not allowed to eat for those 5 days?
Oh, it's CALAR, not CALOR.
Okay, so that was my attempt at a joke, by the way. But
no,
but
I'm
that's
sorry,
okay. It was very dry. It was said very dry.
And these two calendars that they had, the sacred calendar and the solar calendar, they line up every 52 years.
Wow.
So that's this they call it the round count calendar is every 52 years. And so when the Mayans would write a date on something, they would write the date for both calendars at once. You needed to know where you were within both calendars. And then there was this extra third calendar called the long count cycle. And that cycle lasts 5,126 years. And we really aren't sure what it's based on. It seems to be maybe like a number of those solar cycles that like the 52-year cycles. It could be a number of those. It's like almost 100 of those.
Okay.
So this is the calendar that ended on December 21st, 2012, when people thought that the Mayans had predicted the apocalypse. But that was just the end of that calendar cycle, which started on August 11th in the year 3114 BCE.
Do you think anything happened that year that actually was special?
In December of 2012, nothing happened at all.
Yeah.
I remember I was in my rugby teammates' living room on winter break from my freshman year of college, and we were like, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Are we going to not have to go back next semester? Nothing happened. We had to go take more exams. So it was a little let down. But all of these calendars and all these systems are so complicated because space is complicated and things don't orbit on perfect integer multiples. A year here on Earth is not exactly 365 days, and a month is not exactly 27 or 29 days. We actually can't even agree on one single definition for how we should calculate a month, because it's all based on relative perception. You could say that a month is the amount of time it takes the moon to get back to the same position. But is that the same position relative to the sun or relative to the stars? Those two measurements will give you two different answers.
Let me ask you something. So when you say that a year is not 365 days, all that I can think of is I know that some years are 366 days, a leap year. Some years are 365 days. But what do you mean that we can't say that a year is 365 days?
Yes, so that's part of it, that it's not like an exact number. It's more like 364.24 days. So that's part of it.
Oh, that's legitimately it? That makes more sense than the idea that like 1 year has one more day. That wouldn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah, the reason we have leap year is because if we kept it at 365 days every single year, we would eventually scoot back in time. And actually that's what ended up happening. Before the Gregorian calendar was put into effect in I want to say the 1500s, actually. Okay. Before that, our Easter dates were creeping too far away from the spring equinox. So the Catholic Church reconfigured all of the calendars to make it so that we have these different year lengths. So it's a leap year is you get one extra year every 4 years, but except for every 100 years.
Is that right?
So every 100 years, you don't have a leap year, but every 400 years, you do have a leap year. So it's kind of complicated.
Every 100 years, you don't have a leap year?
Unless that 100 year is divisible by 400.
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah. So in 2000, we did. In 2100, we will not.
Get the hell. So that's why we're not conscious of that, because we've been alive when it was 2000 and we had a leap year and it was divisible by 400. We haven't had to deal with this issue. Mm-hmm. And you and I, it's possible that we're not going to be alive in 2100 unless something crazy happens. We probably will be dead.
I hope I'm not around, but yeah.
Wow. I'm learning so much.
Yeah. So that's a part of it, right? But the other part is that it's actually kind of tricky to decide how you're going to define a year. In terms of our normal Christian calendar, have we ever decided where we're going with that? Mostly, we choose the stars. Yeah. So like when the sun would be in Pisces or whatever. Exactly. Yeah. We call this the sidereal time. The way I learned it is that on the spring equinox, so like around March 21st, the sun is going to be at the 0th position. So it is... It's okay. I don't know which star we use to set that, but it's like we say that it's in the 0th position at the vernal equinox. Okay. Would it be leaving Pisces and going into Aries? Yes. Yes. Because Aries would be the next sign. Aries is the next one. Yeah. So interesting. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So the tricky thing about space and positions in space is that space is 3-dimensional, but we see 2 dimensions, and our position changes over time. So we have to have like a moving reference frame for space, which gets pretty complicated. I actually took like a whole class, a whole class's worth of instruction on different coordinate systems in space. And then you have to talk to comedians about it. And what is that like? What is that like? You love it though. It sounds like you really like translating complex topics to speak in lay terms. Mm-hmm. That is my favorite thing to do. Yeah, that's why you're a podcast host. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's sidereal. And then if you wanted, for the moon, let's say, if we wanted to define a month, you could have a sidereal month, which is when the moon is like in the same position relative to those constellations. Or you could have a synodic month, which is the moon in the same position relative to the sun. So that's sidereal versus synodic.
How do you, when you're talking about sidereal and synodic and those terms, how do you get people excited about that stuff?
I don't usually. I usually keep those details out. Part of being a science communicator is knowing what information is going to be interesting and useful to people. And if it's not both of those, then I tend not to share it. But sometimes, especially around a super moon or like a lunar eclipse or something where the moon is really getting a lot of attention, I will do an exercise where I ask people, how long is a month? Because it really can range anywhere between 27 and 29 days. So then I talk about it then. Now I want to talk about modern astronomy in Central America. So there, sadly, is not much to report. I am very familiar with astronomy going on in South America. I've done a tour of different observatories in Chile, which is really, really cool. But that's too far south for what we're interested in.
Yes, indeed.
So when I look at specifically like Central American astronomy, it doesn't look good because of, many generations of under-resourcing and disenfranchisement. There are a good number of telescopes down there because they south of the equator, around and south of the equator, you have really nice views of the sky because the southern hemisphere faces down into the plane of the Milky Way galaxy. Our solar system is like just slightly above that. So they have a good view of the sky. So we put a lot of telescopes down there.
So our solar system is slightly above the Milky Way galaxy.
Slightly above like the middle of it, yeah. It's more helpful if you're trying to study the Milky Way disk. So I talked about that rift that Kinichahau walks through in the Milky Way. That rift is what we call a dark constellation. Instead of making constellations by drawing lines between stars, they see shapes in the inky dark voids. And they only see the dark voids in the southern hemisphere because they are facing that part of the Milky Way. So that it's not necessarily more helpful, you just get different information.
But they obviously back then weren't able to see any of that.
I mean, they could see the stars, they could see the rifts. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know, like where we were in the galaxy, but
they could
still see
some of the inky spots that you just mentioned? Okay.
Yeah, they could see them. Yeah, so the Incas, for example, they have this beautiful collection, a menagerie of dark constellations. So if you look at the whole stream of the Milky Way, there are a few different dark blobs, and they've said that all of those dark blobs are different animals that are drinking from the stream of the Milky Way. They have a llama, there's a snake, there's a frog.
I have seen this. Yeah. Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah. So they have really good night skies, which is why people from the north put a lot of telescopes in the south. In Mexico and in Central America around that region, there are over a dozen different astronomical observatories. One of them is the Large Millimeter Telescope, or the LMT. It's the largest steerable dish telescope in its wavelength range. It observes in the infrared to the near radio, so only a few millimeter wavelengths, but the telescope itself is 50 meters across, and it's studying star formation and planet formation, and it's just one of many observatories there. But there are so few professional astronomers who come out of Central America because the educational resources are lacking, for sure, and they don't guide people towards professional astronomy because it takes a long time to do this. You have to go to grad school, get a PhD. You usually have to do a postdoc, and that's not feasible for a lot of people who are struggling with other things to survive.
Yeah.
But there are programs. One that I know of is called AlphaSen. It's astronomy in Central America and the Caribbean, trying to bring more students through the pipeline to become professional astronomers, which is encouraging. But
that is encouraging.
It's sad that it has to fall down to these basically grassroots movements.
Also, let me ask one question that maybe I got confused about. Because Mexico is not in the southern hemisphere.
No, but it is around the equator. So
Okay.
when you, basically wherever you are on Earth, you can see 180 degrees from left to right. When you're at the equator, 180 degrees basically gives you a full view of the entire night sky, north and south.
So around the equator, you're getting a far better star view.
Yes.
So that would literally like about around Colombia, around Ecuador, around these places that are around the equator. Is that an interesting place for you to, are you interested in going to those places for that reason? Is that at all appealing?
Yeah, absolutely. But there are other factors that you want to consider. Like you want to be in a very high place. You mentioned earlier that you are at a high elevation, so you're closer to space. We want our telescopes to be as close to space as possible. And we also need to make sure that we're seeing both the north and south hemispheres. So with that combination, there aren't a lot of telescopes that are exactly on the equator.
Okay.
They're usually like a little bit above or below.
Okay. It does make you think of Chile, because Chile has the Andes Mountains. So when you were down there, are they up in elevation? Were the telescopes already up higher?
Yes, they were. I went to the ALMA array. This is about 60 different dishes all working together, and it's 5,000 meters above sea level. It's high.
That's very high. Yeah, it's very high.
Yeah, it's really high.
I didn't realize that. So I didn't realize that the position of telescopes also had to do with the topography of the area.
Yeah, you want to be in a high and dry place. You want to have very little atmosphere and very little moisture between you and the sky.
It makes me want to know what's going on and where they are in, obviously, Colombia and Ecuador, not historically rich countries. And many of those countries around the equator in South America, I suppose Brazil you could throw in there, but Ecuador and Colombia, I believe, have mountains. And so I'm curious to know what's over there telescope-wise. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know of any there, and that might just be like an infrastructure thing. At a certain point, once a few telescopes have been built, you're going to put telescopes there because they already have the infrastructure in place, like a dorm for visiting scientists. They have, all of the like wire hookups.
Gotcha.
But, we're building new telescopes all the time. So there's nothing to say they can't go there.
But you're talking about Alpha Cen and getting more opportunities for people who want to get into science. Is Alpha Cen for all of Central America and Mexico, or is it?
All of Central America and the Caribbean.
Okay.
And so they connect people through mentoring opportunities and try to get them into research internships, try to expand research programs in Central America and the Caribbean, in addition to bringing people for internships here.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's a good program. And we need more like it. That is Latin American astronomy, Mesoamerican astronomy. Anything that really caught your eye? Like, what are you going to leave here with today?
First of all, I just learned a lot about, how we consider a year, different ways that we could view a calendar. I learned a lot about how, like, different societies looked at the sky in parallel, but different ways.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to value the sky more and sort of like think about it a little bit more than I did before, and probably do like a little bit more research. It also makes me wonder what is going on with what the Mayans knew and like how much we can know about what the Mayans knew, because it is very scattered. The knowledge of that. I mean, I don't know a lot about past Mayan culture, and it's a very rich ancient culture that kind of gets overlooked in Mexico by the Aztecs. So it makes me want to look into, I certainly, in Mexico, I'm going to go in and dig, because I haven't spent a lot of time in Yucatan, which again, it's almost like going into, when you think of Mexico, Yucatan, which is in the south east of Mexico, it's like another world. It's a separate cuisine. It's the language has different roots, and the people have a different or different style. Like you said, there's still these they look different.
Yeah.
So diving into Mayan culture, I think is really key as like a next step to me understanding more about Mexican culture.
They were so cool. I forgot to mention, like, they invented zero.
Right.
Yeah, the Mayans invented the concept of zero. They had this solar observatory. I know I'm going to say this wrong. Xochicalco.
Okay.
It's this observatory where they projected sunlight down this long chimney into a deep cavern. So they had this disc that had different holes in it so that the sun could shine through the different holes. And that way you're getting like a smaller, more manageable version of this, whatever the surface of the sun looks like. So you can study it, and you can study the motion and like the strength of this light as it's being projected down the chimney to study it. That's very similar to how Galileo studied sunspots through mirrors and like shadows. Yeah.
Wow. See, that kind of stuff is a little bit beyond my ability to imagine. And I wonder how much I can learn and understand and where I can learn and understand more, because I think there's so much to know. And I think that gets overwhelming when you think about space. It almost felt like in my life, I can't focus on that because I'm going to focus on how to make good in this world here. And as best as I can, as much success as I can have here, especially as someone who's a comedian, as most people I want to make people laugh here. In the Jewish religion, tikkun olam is the principle of like how to make the world a better place while we're here. And I've always almost put space at a distance from me, because I think what we have to do on this earth and the mission that we have on this earth is so overwhelming, and there's so much good that we need to do now that it's like, well, let's focus on that first. And that's why I've always never been like someone who's like, I'm going to be an astronaut, or I'm going to go to Mars, or I'm going to go to the moon, and whatever. How do you reconcile the two of those things? Yeah. Like, do you know what my question is?
Like, why is it important to try and learn about space when there are things to focus on here?
Exactly. Or parallel to that, how does learning about space inform or somehow amplify your literal daily, and here in Spanish it's cotidiano, your like daily life?
Oh, I love this question. Yeah. So there's a practical answer here, which is that a lot of technological advancements that you don't associate with astronomy were developed for astronomy. Things like Wi-Fi, GPS, the medical clean room, that was initially invented so that people could keep dust off of our telescopes. So a lot of these things that we use and rely on every day, the cameras in our cell phones, they were developed for astronomy first. So that's the really practical side.
So in other words, we need to invest in astronomy and research, because as we do, and the more we do, the more advancements we'll get into our daily life that will lag behind that, but will come.
Yes, technologically.
Yes.
And then socially, when astronauts go up into space and they look at Earth, they experience something called the overview effect, where they realize that we are all Earthlings before we are citizens of any like bordered sovereign nation or something. It also helps them feel more connected to all of the people living now. And conversations like this one, where we're talking about ancient astronomy, always make me feel connected to people who lived before. So studying space gives us this kind of squishy benefit of developing empathy, developing connection with people across great time and distance.
I love that, and I've never even really thought about that, because it's funny, I love travel and travel within the world, but I've never thought about really traveling above the world. That's funny that I've never thought about that. It's kind of a limiting thing that I've put a limit on myself, because that'll change you forever. If you have to look at the overview effect that you're talking about, that'll change you forever. Like there's no coming back from it. Come back down from there with the biggest kumbaya mentality that you could ever have, and no drug could get you there. Are you going to go to space one day?
No, I've done acid. That's enough. But studying space really is beneficial on lots of different levels. And I'd say even a meta level here, one reason I really appreciate studying space is that, practical contributions aside, it is one of the last few areas where we are just trying to learn for the sake of learning, which to me is something that's very fundamental and integral to being human.
Yeah, I think that's key, like, especially as I get depressed about AI. Because I'm like, well, what is the point? Someone is going to mimic and create a version of Keenan that can tell jokes. I'm literally so scared of that. And I'm scared of, like, as a copywriter by profession, who needs me anymore? Like, as a content creator, like, are we just going to be Redux, and like, what, like, are people going to learn? The value of learning itself, the value of creation is so important because when we create, when we learn, our brain makes connections and we learn and grow. And if we make AI do something, did we really grow? And I'm scared of AI. I'm scared of it. Not that it doesn't have its uses, but when it comes to learning about the deep ocean, I don't know if you relate to this with space as well. These are areas where, I mean, AI can't solve it because AI doesn't know.
AI doesn't know. There are amazing uses for AI, not generative AI, mind you. But AI that is really good at combing through data and finding small trends and patterns that we wouldn't notice because we are perceiving different things. It's kind of like when you use a camera and you can turn on different filters. So like if you use an X-ray filter, you can see our bones, which you wouldn't be able to see with our eyes. AI, when it combs through data, can do something similar. But and when it comes to like art and creation and generative AI, I am right there with you. It can't make something new. What it can do is find patterns.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. But I, as a fellow creative, I'm with you. I feel that fear. Would you like to take a moment to share your human-made art and creation so people can follow you and not any AI that's trying to write jokes?
Oh my God, boy, you are a good at a transition. Yeah, so I have a podcast called Comedian Behavioral Therapy, where the idea of it is I have a weird problem that I haven't been able to figure out for years. And there's some shame that I've involved in it. It's a psychosomatic issue that I have, and it ties in, and my OCD makes it even worse. And so I decided, instead of getting stuck on it myself in therapy with different doctors, is like, I'm actually going to bring you in on this journey as I figure out how to get better. And it's going to be funny the whole time. So that's the podcast as I sort of figure out how to manage my OCD and manage this psychosomatic problem where it feels like my mouth feels like a desert and I can't speak because it's so dry. And like, let's figure out what's going on with this and how I'm going to solve it and how I'm going to live with it and how I'm going to coexist with it through different therapeutic techniques. But also the whole thing is jokes. Like, I definitely include a lot of, I just reveal a lot about my life, and my life is one of me really putting myself out there. So there's that, Comedian Behavioral Therapy, and then you can just follow me online at Keenan Stand Up. If you are in Mexico, y si hablas español, quieres hablar más en español y quieres reírse en español, if you want to laugh in Spanish, I am actually putting on my first special May 9th, possibly after this podcast comes out. I don't know.
This is coming out on Cinco de Mayo. So.
Oh my God, perfect. So 4 days later, I'm recording a special in Spanish. So you can come see me in Mexico City, and all that information is on KeenanSteiner.com.
Awesome. Okay, those links are also in the episode description. So listeners, go and follow those links. Keenan, this has been great. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for the context that you brought. Thank you for correcting me on my pronunciation. That is always appreciated. And I am going to be checking out your podcast to, learn a lot more about you and the vulnerabilities you're willing to share.
Thank you so much. This has been literally, I've never learned more on a podcast. You're a delight, and I wish I could take one of your classes, and I will sit there and take it anytime.
Okay, I'll let you know the next time I'm teaching something.
Please do.
All right, well, listeners, whatever level of Mesoamerican heaven you are currently standing in, remember, you're still space. Bye. Pale Blue Pod is hosted by me, Dr. Moiya McTier, a.k.a. the universe's bestie. I created the show with original co-host Corinne Caputo, a comedienne extraordinaire, and help from the Multitude Productions team. Our theme music is by Evan Johnston, and our cover art is by Shay McMullen, and our audio editing is handled by the incomparable Misha Stanton. I am Go Astro Mo everywhere online, and you can stay in touch with the show and the universe by following Pale Blue Pod on Instagram or checking out our website, palebluepod.com. We are a member of Multitude, an independent podcast collective and production studio. So if you like Pale Blue Pod, you will love the other shows that live at multitude.productions. And if you want a shout out on the show and research notes for every episode, you can join our community over at patreon.com/palebluepod for just about $1 per episode. Thank you so much for listening to Pale Blue Pod. I'll be back next week. Bye.